Good day, folks. So in this one, we're going to be working with input devices and adjusting our scripts to allow us to control the character. So last time we finished, not very exciting in terms of like we would start our game and Ruby would just move. I'm also going to turn on just the grid here a second. Right now I'm in scene mode. I'm just going to turn on a grid so we can just sort of get an idea as far as like the different spaces. That's going to help us later on. Okay. Okay, so how do we add input? First of all, let's check out what's called the input manager. So let's go to edit, and we're going to go to project settings. And we go ahead to the input manager, and we can sort of unfold where it says horizontal. And we see here we've got a negative is going to be set to left, a positive is set to right, as well as it's got alt keys if you're doing like WASD input. Okay, so negative and positive. So essentially what's going to be happening is that like you will be like along the x-axis, if someone presses the right button, it's going to add a 1. If they press the left button, it's going to be a -1. And if you just have it in the middle, that's going to send a 0. So if you're not actively sending input, it's going to be 0. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Also, this is input. The name of this particular sort of input section is called horizontal. It's going to come into play later. Okay, so let's go ahead to our Ruby controller. Right now, you can open it up using whatever editor you wish. I'm just going to use text editor for now. So let's go here to reveal in Finder and just open this up using a text edit. You can use whatever you wish though. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to add a couple of lines of code here. All right, so I put just as under the update function. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and say float horizontal equals capital I for input dot get axis, and then we're going to say horizontal. Let me make sure I spelled everything right. horizontal. Good. Okay. So what this means here is we are declaring a variable called horizontal. It is the variable is of the type float. So in this case here, last time we had declared a variable called position, and that is a variable of the vector2 type. In this case here, a float is something we talked a little bit about before. Float is going to be referring to a number that has the ability to go past, to have decimal values. So 27.5, 99.6, those types of things. So we're saying here, let there be a container that can accommodate values that have decimal places. Then we're going to assign something to this variable. In this case here, input period. Now this isn't a period as in like ending a sentence or ending a thought. This is what's called a method selector. And so there's something called a larger sort of object called input, and then we're selecting the function or method called get access, horizontal. Okay. So what we're going to do now, next line, is we're going to say also then to debug.log horizontal. That's going to print out the value of that variable we just declared, horizontal. Okay. Also, again, reminder, this equal sign is not like a equal sign like let these two things be equal to each other. This is an assignment statement, so we do all the things over here on the right first, and then we assign it to our variable called horizontal. Okay? So let's go ahead and save this code. Let's let Unity import it. Oh, did I forget a semicolon? Yes, I did. I did. Okay, of course. We have to always end our thoughts, not with periods, but with semicolons. My bad. All right, Unity, do your stuff. Okay, so go ahead, we press, it's going to keep on moving because we need to add one more line. Right here in position.x equals position x, we need to multiply this by the variable we just declared. So just this horizontal. I don't know why I just bolded that. All right, there we go. Horizontal. So what that does is, if it's a 0, if nothing's moving, horizontal will be the number 0. If we move it to the left, that'll be a -1. If we move it to the right, that'll be a +1. There we go. Wow, 2 critical errors in with that that script, but that's okay. Okay, so now let's check it out. All right, so now, and let's go here to our console, just so we can see, like, see how it's kind of like updating. What value is our horizontal variable? It's 0, it's 0, it's 0, it's 0. Let's move it to the right. Oh, I'm too far down. It's not, it's updating too quickly. Let's, darn it. Well, anyways, if I could scroll down, I'm just going to pause it a second. Oh my gosh, so many things generated. Well, there's a 1 and a -1 somewhere in this debugger because those are the values that we pass to it. So in terms of that's sort of like that's going to keep track of that as far as the debugger. So anyways, so that's where we are with that as far as like adding a horizontal movement. Now for the vertical, we can really just look at the code that we had added, and it's not going to be that bad. So let's go ahead here, and I'm also just going to get rid of this debugger script just to start off with, just because it's not really helpful. Okay, so we're going to start off, we're going to say float vertical equals, and then the same thing. I'm just going to copy this because it's going to be the same with the exception of like one thing. All right, input.getAxis instead of horizontal, this will be vertical. Okay, and then what we'll be doing is, let's look at the information that we have here. We're not going to be doing position X. We're going to be doing here position dot Y. Why? No, you're not helping me. Position dot Y equals, and then let's just change this up here. Okay, position dot Y plus 0.1f, and then instead of horizontal, we'll just call this vertical. And then we, of course, then send the position, which is containing both the x and y values. We send that back to the object and transform it and move it. Okay. So what do we add here? We added a second variable called vertical. It's going to be of the type float. We get that information from our input device. Vertical, if we want to kind of check this out, I'm just going to save this. You know, just as we had something called horizontal, so we have something called vertical. And that's going to be, when we press the up key, that's going to be adjusting the value being passed to it as far as a 1 or a -1. So if we go to edit, and we go to project settings, we look here not at horizontal but vertical, we see the same sort of situation. The down and up will return either a 1 or a -1 value, and then that will then play into like the math. So let's test our script real quick, make sure everything's good to go. Let's make sure this works. Yep, we can move, whoa. We can move up, move down, side to side. Sweet. And we can press both buttons and get sort of a diagonal thing. Good, good, good. So I'm just going to pause to get my notes ready for the next section. Okay, so the last bit of scripting we're going to be doing is going to change sort of how our character moves instead of being related to the update function, which is called per frame. We're going to change it so that instead of the movement values being expressed in terms of these frame values, we're going to do it by time. Okay, so if we go ahead here, the long and short of it is just we are going to add a time.delta value. So if we go here, this is going to be, the only 2 lines we're going to be adding will be right here for position.x and position.y, this formula. So at the very end, I want you to multiply all of this stuff by time dot delta time, okay? And then let's just copy this. We're going to add this to the next line as well. Now what this does is, and if you check out the text instructions, it gives you sort of a deep dive when it comes to the like what you can do to sort of force a particular frame rate. So like versus 60 versus 30 versus 10 FPS. It's all related to like how often this update function is called. And there's some interesting things you can do with that. For our purposes, I'm not super interested in it. So let's just make sure our changes work, and we'll sort of end here then. Good. Okay. Seems to be moving a little bit slow, but should be good to go with that. So anyways, folks, actually, let's change one thing. I want to adjust one last thing with this. Let's open up our controller again. I want to change this from 0.1F to, let's say, 3.0. And that should give us a bit of a smoother transition there. So that would be, let's see what we got with 3. Let's play around with that, see if we're happy with that value. Did that save? Well, it's importing now. Let's see if 3 is good. Yeah, that's a little quick. We'll see, maybe we'll do some fine adjustments in the next lesson. All right, folks. Hey, I wish you the best of luck. Great stuff.